I never thought my life would take such a dramatic turn at 32. Back then, I was running a small coffee shop, happily married to my high school sweetheart, and everything seemed perfect. We'd been together since 10th grade, and getting married right after college felt like the natural next step. The first 2 years of marriage were exactly what I'd imagined. We had our routines, shared dreams, and were saving up to expand the coffee shop into something bigger. But then things started feeling off. My wife began spending more time away from home, citing work commitments. I tried everything to keep our relationship strong: date nights, surprise gifts, weekend getaways, but nothing seemed to work. 3 weeks before our 3rd anniversary, she handed me divorce papers. No explanation, just, "I don't love you anymore." I begged her to give us another chance, to at least tell me what went wrong, but she wouldn't budge. The divorce was quick since we didn't own much together. What happened next still baffles me. My entire family, parents, sister, everyone, suddenly stopped talking to me. They wouldn't answer my calls, blocked me on social media, and even refused to open the door when I visited. I was going through the toughest time of my life, and instead of support, I got complete isolation from my own family. I fell into a dark place. Quit my job, stayed home for months, and probably would have stayed there if it wasn't for my friends. Tom and Sarah, especially, refused to let me give up. They kept pushing me to follow my dream of opening a restaurant. I had always wanted to start my own place, something bigger than the coffee shop, but had put it off while married. With nothing left to lose, I decided to go for it. Use the name my parents had once suggested. Ironic now, given everything. Tom helped me connect with investors, and Sarah used her marketing expertise to create a business plan. It took 4 years of hard work, but I finally opened my first restaurant. 2 years later, at a friend's party, I met someone special. She loved my restaurant before she even knew it was mine. We dated for 3 years before I found the courage to try marriage again. Now, 10 years and an 8-year-old son later, we've built a beautiful life together. My restaurant grew into a successful chain. We now own several restaurants and hotels across the region, and we're planning to expand nationwide. I recently did an interview with a regional news channel about our success story. That's when everything exploded. 3 days after the interview aired, my family showed up at my office. Just walked in like the last 15 years hadn't happened. They started gushing about how proud they were of my success, wanting to meet my wife and son. When I asked why they'd cut me off all those years ago, the truth finally came out. My wife had been having an affair with my cousin. He was my uncle's only son, and my uncle ran the family business where my dad worked. When my wife got pregnant with my cousin's child, my uncle threatened to fire my dad if anyone stayed in contact with me. My family chose job security and access to their grandchild over me. They never told me about the pregnancy, and somewhere out there, I have a daughter who's turning 20, thinking my cousin is her father. I had security escort them out. Now they keep trying to contact me, sending messages about how sorry they are, showing up at my office. My wife thinks I should hear them out, especially since there's the matter of my daughter to consider. But I can't bring myself to face them yet. How do you forgive family who chose money over you and kept your child a secret for 20 years? My wife found me staring at old photos that night. "You should at least hear them out," she said. But I couldn't. Every time I thought about what they'd done, my stomach turned. They watched me struggle for 15 years while hiding the fact that I had a daughter. For a week, they kept showing up at my office. I drove past them every morning, watching them wait outside with hopeful faces. My assistant kept forwarding their emails, all full of apologies and explanations. Eventually, they stopped coming. Maybe they finally understood I wasn't ready to talk, or maybe security scared them off. Once they stopped showing up, things got easier. I stopped feeling guilty about ignoring their messages. They kept creating new social media accounts to reach me, but I just kept ignoring them. If they could ignore me for 15 years, I could do the same. But there was still the matter of my daughter. My wife and I had her name and knew where she went to college. My parents had mentioned it during their visit. My assistant found her social media profiles. Looking at her photos felt surreal. She had my mother's eyes and my smile. For days, I couldn't decide what to do. She wasn't a minor anymore, so I couldn't demand custody or legal rights. And honestly, I didn't want to deal with my ex-wife or cousin. They were cowards who'd ruined my life, and I wanted nothing to do with them. But my daughter was different. She was my flesh and blood, innocent in all of this. My wife, who'd been incredibly supportive through everything, suggested we send her a message. "There's never going to be a perfect time," she said. "Sometimes you just have to take the leap." She was right, as usual. We decided against flying to her state unannounced. Instead, I sent her a carefully worded message on Instagram, explaining everything. Then came the waiting. Days passed with no response. I checked my phone constantly, wondering if I'd made a mistake in reaching out. Meanwhile, my parents sent one final email. They said they were truly sorry and wouldn't contact me again unless I reached out first. Part of me felt relieved. At least they'd finally gotten the message. But another part felt angry all over again. They'd chosen their comfortable lives over their son, and now they wanted forgiveness just because I'd become successful. My wife kept reminding me to focus on the positive. We might have a chance to know my daughter. We hadn't told our son yet, not wanting to get his hopes up about a big sister until we knew if she wanted to be part of our lives. 2 weeks passed before she replied. Her message was short but hit me hard. She confronted her mother about my message and learned the truth. For 20 years, she believed my cousin was her father. Now her whole world had been turned upside down. But despite everything, she wanted to meet us. I read that message at least 10 times, my hands shaking. My wife hugged me while I tried to process everything. We immediately started planning a trip to visit her that weekend. She couldn't afford to travel, apparently. She wasn't speaking to her parents anymore. So we booked flights right away. Of course, my parents broke their promise about not contacting me as soon as they heard I'd reached out to my daughter. My uncle was furious that the truth had come out, and my parents were terrified of him, even though my dad didn't even work for him anymore. They begged me to tell everyone I'd discovered the truth on my own, but I ignored them. They'd robbed me of 20 years with my daughter. They deserved whatever came their way. Meeting your adult daughter for the first time is something you can never really prepare for. We met at a small restaurant near her campus. My son kept asking if she'd like the same games he did, while my wife squeezed my hand under the table. She walked in exactly at the time we'd agreed. I recognized her immediately from her photos, but seeing her in person was different. She had my nose and walked just like my sister. For a moment, we all just stared at each other, not sure what to do. My wife broke the ice, asking if she'd found the place okay. Soon we were all talking, awkwardly at first, then more naturally. She told us she was studying business, wanted to open her own bakery someday. My son's face lit up when she mentioned she loved video games too. Over dinner, she explained how things had gone down with her mom, my ex-wife. At first, her mom tried denying everything, but eventually had to admit the truth. She wasn't speaking to either of her parents now. They were her only family. They never had other kids after her. "I'm not cutting them off forever," she said, pushing food around her plate. "But I need time. 20 years of lies is a lot to process." She looked at me then. "I need time with this too. With us. Is that okay?" I told her we'd take things as slow as she wanted. We had time to figure everything out. She smiled then, the first real smile of the evening, and I saw myself in her face. She told us more about her life, and we shared stories about ours. Then she mentioned something that caught me off guard. My parents, her grandparents, had been in her life all along. She'd always thought it was weird how emotional they got around her, considering they were just her dad's aunt and uncle. Now she understood why. "I'm not speaking to them either," she said firmly. "What they did to you, keeping me a secret, that wasn't their choice to make." By the end of dinner, my son had convinced her to play online games with him sometime, and my wife had gotten her favorite recipes. We made plans to meet again soon. It wasn't perfect. We had 20 years of catching up to do, but it was a start. Driving back to our hotel that night, I thought about everything that had happened. My first marriage falling apart, my family's betrayal, the years of struggle, building my business, finding love again, and now discovering I had a daughter. Life had thrown me some hard curves, but sitting at that dinner table, watching my wife and son bond with my daughter, I felt at peace for the first time in years. My parents still send messages sometimes, begging for another chance. Maybe someday I'll be ready to hear them out. But right now, I'm focused on building a relationship with my daughter, being there for my son, and growing the business with my wife. We can't change the past, but we can make the future better. My daughter texts me now, asking about business advice or sharing funny memes. My son shows her his game progress over video chat. My wife helps her with recipe modifications for her baking experiments. It's not the family story I imagined having, but it's ours, and we're making it work. Sometimes life's biggest disappointments lead to unexpected blessings. I lost my first family, but built a stronger one. My restaurant chain keeps growing, and now I have a daughter who shares my entrepreneurial spirit. We're all learning as we go, taking it one day at a time. That's really all anyone can do. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this story, please hit that subscribe button. Don't forget to give it a thumbs up and share it with friends or family who might enjoy it too. Your support means a lot. And if you have any thoughts, questions, or story ideas, drop them in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you. See you in the next story.